So as I was recording the episode of the last episode of Steelfur Speaks, I found myself saying some very interesting things about the journey and the changes that have happened in the Blitz format between the call in Krakow, which I cast in April last year with Kugane. It was a really great event to cast. But the Blitz format was rough then, and I would arguably say the Blitz format was at its lowest then. And I think that through the process of reviewing the feedback and the changes that have happened to Blitz this time around, I feel like the Blitz format is probably at its best. To date, it might get better, but it's at its best now than it has ever been. And I feel like there was a lot of very interesting things said in that video, but just due to the nature of how I do my episodes, it ended up at like minute 30 of that episode. So if you have watched that entire episode, you watched all 51 minutes, congratulations, you get a gold star. If you haven't watched that whole episode, you don't need to watch the end of it, because this is now, I'm just taking that out so people will actually see it and get visibility rather than having it buried at the end of that episode. But it still fits into the narrative of that episode, so I would recommend, if you want to hear my whole thoughts on the Blitz changes and how that feeds into this, then do go and watch that in its entirety as like a podcast episode. If you just want to hear about my thoughts about the growth of Blitz from last year to now, then this is the video for you. For a long time, I thought that Blitz was a terrible format, right? Especially, because I cast Crawling Krakow, right? People remember that. Very different time in the game, casting Krakow, the calling, especially you look at the things that have happened with the recent calling in the UK and how diverse that format was, and it was classic constructed. But casting Calling Krakow was not as enjoyable as an experience as it could be, right? LSS were fine, we got plenty of support, they gave us some guidelines, they were still working out their full guidelines, but they gave us guidelines for things to say, how to treat things. We had a really good audio-visual guy backstage. There was some communication problems because we didn't know that we needed to be there on Friday. We were told we could come on the day of the tournament, and then they were like, well, can we do B-roll on Friday? And we were like, well, my flight comes in on Friday at 9 p.m, so if you had said, I would have booked a different flight. But my point is, all of those things paled in comparison to the real problem with the Calling Krakow, which was the Blitz format was not fun at that point in time, because Viserai and Skeleta and Sonata Arcanix were all legal. Now, let's just run through these for people who aren't familiar with what that was. So firstly, Viserai is not legal in Blitz, for very good reason, though people will be looking at CC and being like, surely this guy can't be that overpowered. I mean, look at what Lexi can do. Right? As a reminder of Viserai's ability, when you play a Runeblade card, if you have played another non-attack action card this turn, create a Rune Chant token. Rune Chant is, when you play an attack action or attack with a weapon, you destroy the Rune Chant and you generate 1 arcane damage to target opposing hero, and it's not a conditional effect. It's not an optional effect, so when you attack and you meet the criteria, you have to trigger your Rune Chants. Then we have Bloodsheath Skeleta, also banned, right, in all formats. There's a 2-block equipment from Crucible of War, the third set of Flesh and Blood, that says instant destroy Bloodsheath Skeleta. The next attack action and non-attack action card you play this turn gain. This card costs 1 less to play for each Rune Chant card you control. Then we have Sonata Arcanix. The cost is X and X. Reveal the top X plus 3 cards of your deck for each non-attack action card revealed this way. Put an attack action card revealed this way into your hand. Then deal arcane damage to target hero equal to the number of cards put into your hand this way. Shuffle your deck, banish Sonata Arcanix. As you can imagine, Viserai is very, very good at generating Rune Chants. You might play a turn that says, I play Mordred Tide. Mordred Tide says, whenever you make a Rune Chant this turn, make a second Rune Chant. That includes from Viserai's ability. Then you play Become the Arc Knight. You discard an attack action to search your deck for a non-attack action, go and get Sonata Arcanix. You make 1 Rune Chant, 2 Rune Chants from playing Sonata Arcanix, you now have 2 Rune Chants. Then you destroy your Vexing Quill hand, which is a glove that when you destroy it, you get 2 Rune Chants, you get 3 Rune Chants. Then you play Moravian Skies, right? Get a Rune Chant, you get 2 Rune Chants from Viserai. Now you've generated 7 Rune Chants this turn by playing 3 cards, right? Then you play then you crack your Bloodsheath Skeleta, and you play Sonata Arcanix, making its cost -7. That means that you reveal the top 3 plus 3 cards of your deck with 1 resource left over. Okay? From those 3 cards, you're going to go and get possibly, because it's 6, you can possibly get 3 attack actions, right? And you've probably played a Moravian Sky, so one of them has go again. You've also generated, because you generate 2 from Sonata Arcanics, 9 rune chants. You then proceed to attack upwards of 3 times for 3 or 4 damage, plus the 9 rune chants, and essentially come in for lethal on the second turn of the game. Now, lots of people figured this out before the calling in Krakow. And I'm giving this example because this was Blitz at its lowest for me, right? If this is Blitz at its highest, for very good reasons, diverse format, games on over in a heartbeat, that was Blitz at its lowest. Games were incredibly high variance, games were over in a heartbeat, games rarely made it past turn 2 or 3, and if one of the Viserai players drew well, they would just blow the other opponent out of the water, because you just couldn't keep up with the amount of arcane damage and physical damage coming at you, fueled by this crazy combo, right? Because also, this reduced the cost of the non-attack action as well. So you could play some huge non-attack action that costs 3, give it go again somehow, and suddenly you're coming in for, 6 plus 9. Your opponent's basically dead before you even get out the gate, right? So I had a front row seat to that, and I say this because this is part of an interesting retrospective, and I always like to put these sorts of things at the end of my videos because I know only the real fans are still listening, and very few of you are, and that's fine. Is that imagine casting a calling where that is the case, right? Where the games are taking 5 minutes. So you come in, you line up, you vamp for 5 minutes, you talk about the standings, but it's hard to do because the standings are all Viserai versus Viserai, or Viserai versus someone else who then gets defeated by a Viserai. And you end up in a situation where, you're actually talking for 5 minutes, the games take 5 minutes, you have a 5-minute player interview where they all talk about how their Viserai deck is good. Though we eventually we started just going further and further down the rankings, bringing up games that weren't, winning in games, but were different heroes just for a bit of variety, because we knew that for the top 8 we'd be casting Viserai. And I mean, if we just bring up that numbers and crystallize that in fashion, right? The only real decks that were targeting Viserai properly were Oldhim, Icelander, and Kano. Icelander hadn't really been fully explored at this point. Viserai was 32% of the day 1 meta, it was 50% of the day 2 meta, and then you look at the top cut, we have Viserai mirrors, we have Viserai mirrors, Kano knocks out an Oldhim, and then both of the wizards get beaten by Viserai into an all Viserai final, right? So, and this is Yuanji, wonderful person who won that tournament, right? And it was a great event. But actually, we had Stavro also kicking. There were some balance problems at that stage of the game, right? Because we had Stavro kicking around in CC as well. And they've learned a lot since then. And this is one of those things that reflects how much they've learned since then, in terms of how balanced Blitz is now versus how balanced it was. I mean, this was 2022, how balanced it was over a year ago. So, they've learned so much in the past year, and it's kind of fantastic to see how balanced and Blitz has come, because this was Blitz at its lowest, much like arguably Stavro meta was CC at its lowest. Maybe, I think so. One deck just dominating the format in a very NPE kind of way. This is a beautiful top 8. I am behind this screen somewhere, doing something else, but that's neither here nor there. So Blitz has come such a long way, and it's really good to see. If you had asked me, if we're being honest, if you had asked me before this if I would cast another Blitz calling, I probably would have said no, unless there were 2 tables on the go. If there were 2 tables on the go with staggered starts, I would have 100% done it. But if you'd asked me to cast another single table Blitz calling, even 6 months ago, I probably would have said no. I mean, okay, let's be honest. I would have said yes because I know I had my channel break and things like that, but I have still been keen to do more casting, despite the fact that, despite the fact that I haven't necessarily had the opportunities. The UK has quite a competitive content creator meta, and the Push the Point guys work so hard for the accolades they well and truly deserve. So I haven't really had the opportunity within my home market. I have cast, I cast Nationals in either Singapore or Hong Kong last year. But, you know, I would happily cast another calling. And I think while I would have had serious considerations about casting another Blitz calling in the past, after seeing Skirmish Season 7 evolve, and as a caster having the ability to talk about sideboard choices and things that people are putting into their decks to gain points in certain matchups, as well as, you know, the potential for having games that are actually reaching turn 6, 7, 8, actually having a bit of depth, I would definitely cast a Blitz calling again, in a sense that I wouldn't have cast it before. So there you have it, really. This is a snapshot of what Blitz looked like at its lowest. It was 2-turn games with, you know, one hero dominating the format and just deleting other heroes from the meta, and even the ones that did counter it, you know, got knocked out in good order. Now, this Kano, if I remember correctly, did almost win this game. So, you know, the Wizards were doing work, and Iceland also wasn't really well solved. So maybe a bit down the line, this wouldn't have been such a problem. But I think anytime you've got X costs and you've got unlimited reduction on 2 cards, that's a problem. You know, this could give you up to -8 on 2 cards. That's insane. So that's worth bearing in mind. Blitz, at its worst, is a format where one hero manages to dominate 50% of the day 2 metagame at a calling. And here we are, August 2023, and you know what? It's just not that anymore. It's not that anymore. If we go back to the meta report, this is day 1. This is a field full of different heroes. There's no 50%. There's no 30%. You've got Chain. He's very popular. People were loving playing their shadow cards again. But guess what? There's a ton of other heroes there, and they're all viable. And then if we get into the top 8, you see then even more variation. Ira wins the event. 2 Reinars, 2 Kanos, Kasai, Briar, even a Phi. Like, the format is fun, and it is wide open. And I firmly believe, and in fact, I agree with what LSS said in the article, and I think we've gone from a format where this is true, where 4 heroes dominate the format, and we've gone from a format where this is true, where one hero just comes in and says, hey, this format's mine, to a format where 13 heroes are winning Living Legend points. And isn't that fantastic for the game? And isn't that fantastic for new players coming into the game where Blitz is their first format? Isn't that just brilliant? We've come such a long way since the initial foundations of this game. We've come a really long way from, we'll be honest, the negative experience I had at the Call in Krakow. Casting was great. Kugane was great. The format wasn't good. The format wasn't fun to cast. And the fact is, we spent more time trying to vamp and trying to make the game enjoyable to watch for people than we did casting some of the games, because they just happened that quickly. To a format where I have played Blitz and gone down to the last 10 cards of my game, not even playing against a control deck, playing against another aggro deck on my Briar list and just choosing to block smartly, set up a good turn, and pick my points. I have gone down to 10 cards. I have gone down to turn 12, I think. And I have had some of the best games of Flesh and Blood I've played playing the Blitz format. And you know what? That is everything I want for this game. And to be honest, Blitz is the gateway for new players. That is everything I want for Blitz as well. And that is something to be commended. The LSS design team and these changes are just a firmer reinforcement that they take Blitz seriously and they want Blitz to be fun, and they're invested in making Blitz fun, which is fantastic. If you've made it to 51 minutes in this video, thank you. You are fantastic. I'm probably going to clip the second half of this video into a second video, just talking about the growth of the game from the Calling in Krakow over a year and what difference a year makes, as well as some good Living Legends. But I think if you've listened this far, thanks a lot. And if you know you have listened this far and some of these things have resonated with you and you still haven't subscribed, then I wouldn't be a content creator if I didn't ask you to do that. So thanks a lot and have a good week.